first Palace game I went to would have been in 1979 with my dad when I was around about 3, and I remember it was a home game against Coventry City. I think the most funny thing about that is the fact that my dad's an Arsenal supporter, so I don't know how I managed to end up being a Palace supporter, to be honest, but I suppose at the time I was born in Tooting and my parents moved to Thornton Heath and to just on the old London Road there, to a place called Warwick Gardens, which is still there. And my dad used to go to games. He was actually at the Burnley game in 1979, despite being an Arsenal fan. He went along, and then he started taking me to games, and that's how I got into supporting Crystal Palace. Favourite Palace player of all time? That would have to be Ian Wright, by far. I mean, obviously you're looking at the current crop of players, you'd have to say players like Wilfried Zaha or maybe even Luca, but my favourite player of all time for Palace has been Ian Wright. I actually saw him a couple of times in the 90s. I didn't go as much. My dad stopped taking me, but obviously when I was at high school, I remember the FA Cup run so well, and watching the games on telly, listening to him on Capital Gold at the time, and Ian Wright was a fantastic goal scorer, and I think when we lost him, that was the biggest loss at that point for that club, for our club as a whole. And he was always a fantastic goal scorer, always in the right place at the right time, formed a formidable partnership with Mark Bright, and he is probably my favourite player, Palace player that we've ever had. Most memorable game? I think for me it would have to be the playoff final against Sheffield United. It was my second time I went to Wembley with Palace. I hadn't been to the FA Cup final or the Zenith Data Systems Cup final. So that was the first time, the second time I'd been to Wembley, and the first time that I'd seen Palace win in a game at Wembley. I obviously went the season before to see him play Leicester in the playoff final when we lost to that Steve Claridge goal off the shin. But the everlasting memory is that we were at the Palace end. We were in the corner, sort of on that corner where at the actual end where David Hopkins scored that goal, and I just remember the roar as that goal went in, and I don't think anybody expected him to take it from that position and score and curl that ball into the top corner past the United keeper. It was just an unbelievable goal, and it meant so much to us at that point. So for me, that would be the most memorable game. Best goal, again, has to be that goal. Has to be the David Hopkins goal against Sheffield United. I mean, she didn't. If on the day, I just remember the ball coming back out to him, and thinking, he's going to get it in the box, cross it into someone, but no, he just took it himself, and the curl on that ball into the top corner. It's one of those football moments. It's just pure unbridled passion at that point when that ball goes in that net, and we knew we were going up to the Premier League at that point after a couple of years being away, and for me that is the most memorable goal. Favourite Palace kit? The sash. I know people will say that it'd probably be for them the Adidas sash, but for me it's always going to be the Hummel sash. And the reason for that is, as a kid I used to play, I'm a big gamer, and I remember picking up a copy of Super Kickoff, or Kickoff, I think it was on a game that was on the Amiga at the time, and I remember my cousin having it, and obviously the sash kit is iconic anyway, but I remember seeing that picture on the front of that game with the AVR across the top, across the sash. It was actually on the diagonal of the sash, and I remember that so well, so vividly. And I think I actually still got a copy of the game somewhere, because I bought it for my kids when I bought a Mega Drive. And so, you know, it was like to have a Palace player on the front of the game was unheard of. You wouldn't have known it at that point. And it's just, for me, that Hummel shirt, the Hummel sash, is the most iconic, my favourite shirt and my favourite kit. The first shirt I owned, that would have to be, I believe it was the 91-92 season kit, the red and blue with the buttons at the top. I had that. It was just after the cup final. I think I remember having it, and it had the buttons on the top. And my grandparents bought it for me, and I loved that kit. I think I wore it. To be honest, I wear Palace kits all the time. I'm always wearing the Palace shirts. I'm terrible. I think any time you see me in the street, there's very rare occasion that I'm not wearing a Palace shirt or something else. Only obviously when I'm at work. But for me, you know, that was my first kit. That was the one I was bought by my grandparents, and they bought it for me. It was a button-up shirt with 5 Virgin on the front. And that was all. I loved that kit, and I think, yeah, that was the first one that I ever bought. Where do I think Palace will finish up this season? It's going to be a tough one this year. I'm looking at the way things are going at the moment. We've only got one player in. I know there's a lot of concern around the club at the moment about, you know, from fans about what we're going to be doing, and if are we going to buy anybody. But I still think that Palace have got a good enough squad to sort of command mid-table. Obviously, it's a factor. It's going to be difficult with the teams in the top 6. I mean, I don't think Tottenham has spent anything just yet. There's a couple of other teams that haven't, and West Ham and Brighton have been going mad, buying 6-7 players. I don't think we need to buy too many. I certainly don't think we got a bad first 11. I think we won't have the same issues as we did last season with regards to injuries. I think that was just a real one-off. I don't think that will happen again. You know, you don't expect to have 11, 12 players injured throughout the season, and of course that's going to test any team's depth, and I think that's where we do fall down a little bit. But for me, I think this season is one where we will finish probably mid-table. I'd say 13th. I don't think it's beyond us, and I think it's I think people have to sort of put into perspective the squad we have, how we can, you know, the teams in the top 6 are going to be very difficult to compete against. I don't think I know people keep sort of comparing to Leicester, and you know, but I don't think that will ever be achieved again. As for teams like Burnley, people have been saying, you know, Burnley are strengthened. Yeah, they've strengthened, but they've got a very good nucleus of players, and I think that's what we got to actually do, is keep a decent nucleus there, which we have. And I personally think that as long as we can get maybe 2-3 players in, even if they're just loan signings, 2 loan signings and a permanent signing, will be fine. I don't think it's too much to say that we can't finish 13th. Obviously, it looks bad when you see all these other teams strengthening, but I personally think that as long as you keep the nucleus of a good side, you keep that togetherness there, I don't see why we can't get higher up the table or 13th. So for me, mid-table this season would be fantastic.